Welcome to Loose Talk Podcast. Yeah, I know we always have special guests, but this is a really special guest.
Special.
VIP guest.
Yes, okay, VIP. Very important.
Yeah.
Super important. All right, guys, Loose Talk Giants. We have Mr. Donald Duke in the building.
Hi, how you guys?
We're good.
We're good.
It's kind of strange.
Yeah, it's strange. You know? I don't know if you listen to past editions. I don't want you to. But it's really good to have you here because not only do we have super important guests like this. I mean, not to throw shades at the other guests we've had because they've come to tell amazing stories as well. But you're running for president. And just drop that ball. It's a big deal.
That's serious stuff.
Yeah.
Serious
stuff.
Sometimes I wake up and say, how did Jola get me into this mess?
Don't just go to YouTube and watch anything about us. But we're so happy we have you here because we are going to have a lot of interesting discussions. A lot of people have questions. We have questions. So it's a great avenue to just chat, and talk about you, talk about your life, talk about how you've gotten to this very moment where you are, and what the future holds for you and Nigeria. So thank you for gracing this.
Thanks, Osagie. I'm glad to be here actually, and I think it's great to have discovered this.
Yeah.
It's except you're in your world.
Yeah.
And you guys are in your own bubble.
Yeah.
It's not the normal stuff that people know about. So this is great, and I'm really proud of what I've seen. Leo said you have about 250 guys working here.
Yeah.
Well, like I said to you coming up, the working environment is not the norm, There's a lot of work and play.
Yeah.
And that obviously enhances your productivity because you're working in an environment that you enjoy. So it's more like joyful activity going on here. You said you come to work something about 6 in the morning and leave at about 10. So you live here.
Yeah.
You sleep somewhere else, but you live here.
And when you just need to be somewhere where you can really just relax your mind. After facing all that traffic, after facing all those SARS chasing you. Not sure if you could make it to the office on time. And so many things. You just want one place where you can really relax yourself and be comfortable.
It's good.
So great. I think let's just go straight to it. Less than a year to the elections, you've announced that you are running for president.
Declaration of intent.
Yeah, declaration of intent. I mean, why so? Shall I say so soon? Or too late rather?
Yeah.
Too late? Is it too late?
Well, if you look at the field in Nigeria, I don't think it's too late. A lot of people have not said anything. There's a lot of body language, but at least I was bold enough to say it. So far, only 3 people have said it.
Yeah.
The incumbent, Atiku, and myself.
Yeah.
So the thing is, Nigerian politics, we're still not as democratic as we ought to be. Yeah. Some folks get angry that you want to be president. It ought not be that way. It's your constitutional right to aspire. Yeah. So some people are like, okay, for instance, in APC, if you get up today and say you want to run for presidency, you are persona non grata then immediately. Yeah. It shouldn't be that way, So I know there are lots of folks out there. In my mental reckoning, there are about 15 people who, given the opportunity, will throw their hat in the ring. But only 3 so far have mentioned it. And that just it tells you that it's a very immature democracy.
Yeah.
I mean, some people think, in the States, a governor, one of the states, a governor said to me, can you imagine my commissioner resigned because he wants to contest? And I'm like,
but that was no.
Why not?
Yeah.
But we appropriate offices. So if I'm governor, that is my own.
Yeah.
And anyone who aspires is trying to steal what
God has given to me.
and you can see it in many ways.
Yeah.
When Umaru was ill and in hospital,
Yeah.
the country literally came to a standstill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From his hospital bed, he was asked to sign that budget.
Yeah.
Budget, yeah.
I know he didn't sign anything. They have their signature on a stamp and all that. But constitutionally, the vice president moves in. It's supposed to be a seamless system. And so it's also responsible why we have a checkered system of governance where there's no continuity.
Yeah.
Because once you go, the next man comes, okay, you've gone, let me just start my own thing,
Yeah.
and all that.
Probably wipe what
You know,
you've
yeah.
done. Yeah.
If it needs to do that to grow. So it's immaturity, a lot of it in the system, which we have to do something about.
Okay, if I can ask, you talking about people getting angry for you, you coming up to say, I'm in this position. Is it true that you fell out with Obasanjo because he had the ambition of being president just after him?
No, on the contrary, I maintain a good relationship with him. He had his own views. Again, it's part of ownership of this thing, You want to run, have I offered it to you? And all that. He probably had his own views and of the folks he wanted to take over from him. So he literally picked Umaru Yar'Adua and Goodluck Jonathan. One thing about an office as serious as a presidency, you don't conscript people to run. Because you must be mentally, physically, spiritually, right? And ready for the job. Mentally, you must have the vision for it, okay? Spiritually, you must be strong. You must be of good faith, regardless of what your faith is. And physically, you must have the will, the desire to make it happen, because you're going to be constantly swimming against the wave. The presidency of Nigeria is so all-powerful. He is a deity. I mean, I hate to say this, but I've been where people say, Oga, after God, na you. And it may sound blasphemous, but there's some truth in it. So the struggle for it is enormous. You see the man walking, and sometimes you just look at this man, this man is so powerful, and but it ought not be that way. It ought not be that way.
I want to take you back, to our very first question. When was when was the moment in your mind? When did you mentally make that decision? To walk down this line right now. You couldn't. You hear what I'm like? What time? What time?
I'm laughing.
It's a long time.
I was about 8 years old.
No,
Honestly,
come on.
I'm serious. I remember one day walking up to my father and saying, and I had one of those parents who would always encourage you. I said to my father, I'd like to be president of Nigeria, but I want to be governor of my state first, then eventually be president. He said, really? I said, yes. I said, and what would you do? And I prattled off and said so many things. He says, well, if you really think that hard, believe in yourself and work hard towards it. But, you've got to do well in school, right? Bring me back on track. And all that. So, yes, I've been politically conscious from childhood. And my favorite subject was history. And if you like history, and my specialty in history, and I still consider myself as an authority of the history of the world from 1914 to the present day. I could lecture in any university. I could be a professor in that field. I love it. And I constantly update myself. The history of the world from 1914 to the present day is pure politics. From the First World War to the Second World War, the Korean War, the developments and this and that and all that. So that, if you ask where the origin is that far back. But, at the age of 18 into 19, I was a member of the Students' Union in Ahmadu Bello University. And Ahmadu Bello was a very political university. There were maybe one or two other universities in the entire north, but it was the largest university in all of West Africa. At that time, it was only 25,000 students, and it was the largest. Today, every other university is 25,000. Mm-hmm. But at that office as social secretary, which is not, you may not consider it that
Big of a position.
important, but it was very political for them. It was there you come across a crisis in our country, the distinctions between North and South, Christian and Muslim.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But I still had the edge and I won. Then I, along with some other friends, sponsored a governor. I was about 29, 30 then. Sponsored a governor or influenced the emergence of a governor. And he insisted I be his commissioner for finance, budget and planning. And thereafter, that was short-lived. I was commissioner from about 30 to, from the age of 30 to slightly under 30.
1992?
92 to 93.
93, yeah.
Then from 95, I had a year break. From 95, I became a member of the National Economic Intelligence Committee,
Mm-hmm.
which again was under a military government. It was Abacha who was head of state. But we were his de facto cabinet. Whatever memo came to council, we had an opinion to write. So we attended council meetings, and I was also a member of the National Economic Council of the country. So I had an incredible perspective of governance. Then in 98, I decided to run. And so, that's the journey so far.
Yeah, I mean, okay. But to rein you back again to my first question, right?
You're really hooked on this, your first question.
Yeah, I am. Of course, with the announcement, people even in this office and, just conversations on social media was how long is it going to take you to be able to rile up the grassroots? How long is it? You have to go on that journey. We need to see that journey. And your case is a bit different because you've been a state governor.
Has won 2 elections.
You get what I mean? So yes, it's a bit different, but we need to see that journey from the grassroots again, not just your state. We're talking 36 states now. It's different. It's complex. You've said it before. Nigeria is a complex country. You have how many tribes, how many languages, different backgrounds. How are you building from that grassroots, building the momentum to the top for the elections next year?
This is part of it. I asked you a question. What's your listenership or viewership, or, because people underestimate the urbanites, your influencers, right? And that's what in politics, where the elites go, that's where largely the rest of society goes. But yes, we have about 6 months to the elections, and we have to hit the ground hard, running, going to communities and all that. And we're not going to do it in a haphazard way. We've actually started. Yesterday I was in Abuja speaking to a group that was so diverse, about 500 folks who came from literally all over the country to listen. But we would start stumping when a few things have happened. And let me preempt you. We need to sort out the issue of platform, because I know you're going to ask that question sooner or later. So let me just take care of it now. CUPP, coalition of these parties and all that. So if you ask Atiku, for instance, what party are you running on, he would step back a bit, because is it going to be PDP? What's this coalition going to look like? Yeah. We know he's a member of the PDP and all that. Yeah. So the opposition is still in a state of flux. Okay. But that's normal. It'll be okay by the end of the month. That will sort itself out. But again, I also don't want to be caught in a web. We have this interesting way of getting people off the scene. They say, we've zoned it to this part of the country. Yeah. Well, I don't buy that. A few people can't stay in the room and decide where the country should go. It's a democracy, so everyone should have the opportunity to put himself forward. So I want to be careful. I don't want to be caught in that web, because if you jump on a platform and that platform announces that they've zoned it, before you even start the race, it's over for you.
You're lost, yeah.
So you've got to be quite strategic about it and see what happens.
When will that happen, though?
In the next month or so,
Okay.
it'll be clear. And besides, my perception right now, people are not voting for parties. They're looking for an individual they can
Connect with.
Saw that with the last
right?
election.
So, and the elections are not tomorrow; they're in about 6 months. So there's time, you know. The important thing is sell the message, connect with the people, and see how things go from there.
We see how influential parties are, right? In this democracy, in a dispensation, we see how there's so much reference, there's so much discussions about parties and how parties are almost more influential. I won't say more influential, but like revered, even though there's a president. The discussion between APC and PDP now is at its height, while we should actually be discussing about the president and the people in these offices who we should be holding accountable. When you do pick a party, and if it's not a virgin party you're starting, if it's a party you're going to ride on, how do you now express your ideologies and make people take these ideologies and run through the party if they decide to pick you as the flagship?
Truth is, regardless of what party you pick, it's the character of the person who is the flag bearer that will determine the direction the party goes. So when you had an Obasanjo as president, you could see that he literally molded the party to suit his person.
Yeah.
The same thing when Jonathan came in, the party was also molded according to his own person. Whether it was good or bad, he molded according to the person. So today, if you talk to APC, everyone there is singing corruption, corruption, corruption. 3/4 of them are corrupt, but the corrupt people are also singing corruption because that's a swan song in the party.
Yeah.
Because we don't really have parties that are ideological. We have platforms.
Yeah.
So
Coalition
we have
of people.
political platforms, and whoever is heading the platform will dictate the tune of the platform. That's it. I think that what is happening, where there's constant bickering between PDP and APC, not on the progress of the party, I mean, it's on who has power and all that, should be sickening enough, actually, to the vast majority of Nigerians to want to get rid of this nonsense going on.
Yeah. Well, as someone who's contesting for president of the country, like what are your major the major things you are looking at, the major sectors of the industry you are looking at, like your main concerns?
Broadly, you want to create prosperity, and I said broadly, because everyone is going to say that. You want to ensure that every Nigerian is a productive entity, because all problems come down to the fact that Nigerians, there's too much discontent. So Boko Haram is a result of discontent. The herdsman crisis is discontent. The kidnapping, all those things are all discontent. So you've got to deal with it. How do you deal with it? How do you ensure that the average Nigerian in the prime of his life is a productive entity, able to even aspire to dream? Because I can see our young people getting so disillusioned that they don't dare to dream anymore. The reason is, and it's pitiable because at this stage of our development where there's so much to be done that has not been done, and that's the beauty of a developing country. You think if you're in America or in the Western world where everything has been done, you're just going to look for a job and keen. Yeah. There's very little opportunity for entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. But here there's a vast array you can do that has not been done. But what kills these dreams are access to capital, poor infrastructure, low skills development, So here you are, you're probably married, you're young, you're married, you have a kid, you have responsibility. you're afraid to dream. You just want a job to take care of what you have, if you're lucky.
Yeah.
Okay? But if you're in a society where access to credits, to capital was affordable and available, then you'll see the productivity of people. Okay? If you wanted to start a business today, whatever business it was, and you needed money from the bank, you go to a bank, chances are that you won't get it.
Yeah, the interest rate is killing. Yeah.
How can you have a society where there's so many people unemployed? A society where they say they want to grow by 6% annually. I mean, that's what the government says, which I think it means you have no ambition. Yeah. Because if your population is growing at 3.2% and you want to grow at 6%, then you really don't have any ambition. Yeah. I've said that we have to grow at 15% constantly for 10 years. Non-oil. Leave the oil. Even if the oil is $200 a barrel, it doesn't matter. But non-oil has to grow consistently for 15% for 10 years to recalibrate the country, because we should be a $2.5 trillion economy and not a $500 billion economy. But here you are, you want to grow the economy and there's no access to credit. So if you find that we keep on talking about foreign investor, only fools thread where angels dare. If Nigerians are not investing in their country, why should a foreigner come here and invest? Yeah. Foreigners run on the back of Nigerian investment, you know. And so even the FDI that comes in is very short term. They come in and play in the stock market. And before you say Jack Robinson, they're shipping their money out. So you can't plan on that. And so we need to look at our entire financial system. Here you are with banks declaring huge profits. There's hardly a bank that doesn't have a private jet for their MD. Yeah. That's all part of your interest rate, right? And when you think of banking critically, you ask yourself a few questions. This is OPM, other people's money. Yeah. So banks take your deposits, make a huge profit out of it, will not give you a loan on it, you know. So we've got to redesign that system. Then you've got to look at the basic infrastructure that we constantly talk about is energy, power. It's not rocket science. And I think, if anything, Nigeria is an energy-blessed country. And our energy is gas, not even oil. Yeah. We have 10 times more gas than we have oil. So we were able to flare 2.5. Yeah,
we keep flaring it.
We were at one stage, we were flaring 2.5 billion cubic feet of gas daily, which is equivalent to about 25 million liters of diesel. Okay? Now, if I were going to put turbines to power all of Africa, they won't consume 25 million liters of diesel. You know, that's huge. I mean, we've been doing this for over 30 years. And I've said in different fora, if you clean up the gas, pipe it and distribute it throughout the country, right? You get all these factories off the national grid, put them on gas, free the national grid for domestic and small-scale enterprises. This country would, with appropriate credits, this country would explode.
But we know why this isn't happening, because some people are benefiting off a broken system. Basically corruption, yeah.
The will is not there. The will. Yeah. I mean, really, every president lives for history, would love to be immortalized. Yeah. So they would like to take this idea and make, I'm the one that made Nigeria a great country. Yeah. But they get there, and you discuss this, and I have had the opportunity of discussing this with presidents and all that. But the will is just not there. You talk about the broken system. Yes, it's a broken system, but it's your will to overcome that. So if you, for instance, you guys are all businessmen, I assume, let's hypothetically, you're creaming off the system that is not working. Yeah. But I'm president. I have all the powers. I should be able to overcome you. Yeah. But if I don't have the will, right, I'll join you. So that's the point. I mean, I've seen it happen. I've been involved in governance. And I always tell members of my cabinet that to be a successful leader, your will should be such that if people think they're crazy, fine. But where their craze ends, I give gap before I start my own. Yeah. So whatever you want to come, I will come with the full might of my will and the office. And if I have to walk through that wall, I will do it. Because you see, the best politics is doing the right thing. Here you are. I gave you a little example. I've just used two instances that can catapult this country to a stratosphere. Yeah. Look, you're flaring gas, distribute it. In fact, I've said sometimes, give the gas free. They say, why? I say, you're flaring it. So give it free. Let that be a subsidy to industry, because you're in an environment where business is hard. So we subsidize you with free gas. But it's not that free, because it will enhance your productivity, and at the end of the day, you'll be
generate
more revenue, and so I can tax you more.
Yeah.
After all, we build expensive roads, we don't toll them, because in our minds, we know that it will enhance business. So give the gas free, okay? It's not like petrol. We subsidize petrol that we import. No, subsidize the gas. Don't subsidize petrol, okay? Because you see, in petrol, they'll tell you they smuggle it across the border. You can't smuggle the gas across the border. Okay, so you use it. Then factories that are producing at 20-30% capacity will go up to 100%. Your product will be competitive globally, because you have knocked out about 30-40% of your operational cost. Then if your interest rate is also under 10% in the single digits, you are globally competitive. You will dominate all of West and Central African markets. And that's what we should be doing. It's not rocket science. It's just a desire to do it. In 3 years, you can have a gas grid. And I've worked it out. You need 5,000 kilometers of gas pipelines throughout the country to ensure that there's gas everywhere. Okay? While that is being constructed, in 3 years, you can clean up that gas and pipe it throughout the country. Look, the furthest north gas is Obajana, right? Ajaokuta was where it got to. It was the Dangote industry that moved it to. Why isn't there gas even in Abuja? Abajana to Abuja is not far. Why is there no gas in Kano? There should be gas everywhere. And the interesting thing about gas is that it's not only available in the Niger Delta. In the Benue Trough, there's a lot of gas. In fact, the Benue Trough is mostly gas. So it's not that you're getting only the gas from the Niger Delta. You can get it from other parts of the country. But that's where our real resource is. I don't know if you've been listening to the news. Donald Trump is accusing Germany of it's gas from Russia. So energy is the basis. Look, slavery was not because they wanted black people in America. They needed them for energy. It was energy. So the whole world is run by energy. And here you are flaring your own. Come on. How? It's difficult. I don't know.
But why? Sorry. Well, why is our political system, producing leaders that don't have the political will?
Because you're not involved. Because in a military regime, you can say, okay, you had no voice. But now we're in a democratic system. You've got to take charge. You've got to get involved. Because you failed this time doesn't mean you give up, right? You keep on striving. But something happened in 2015. We showed that we could change the leadership. That should buoy us now to say, okay, so we can do this thing. All right, we're not going to take this nonsense anymore. And that's why it's so shocking that even though we succeeded in 2015, we're still that lethargy to go get young people to go register and all that. They're so excited to say, not too young to run. There's nothing novel about, I was young. By the time I was 45, I'd done 8 years, I'd retired, Dieter Spiff, okay, that was military. He was 24 as governor. Gowon was 32. We've had young people. M. Timbu was 29 in a democracy, So it's not just reducing the age of participation in politics. It's a desire to get involved. And it's your future that is directly at risk. The folks who are in their 70s, the average cut-off age in Nigeria is about 50-something. So anyone who is 50, he's in the 70s, doing extra time.
Well, there's, some would say, especially for kids who were born in like the 80s, there's this theory about, being born into the military dispensation era, Buhari, post-Buhari, Babangida. And when, 99 came, people were already grown up. So through those years, they didn't understand, there was no democracy. People didn't also understand why there was this fear in participation, patriotic to their society. So we bred a couple of people, and at the age of, by 99, you had grown-ups who necessarily didn't care about their country. The second thing is, history has also been pulled out from the syllabus in schools. So you have kids going from primary school all the way up to university who don't study history, who can't name
It's one of the biggest disasters in education.
their head of states and
educational
presidents
curriculum.
from 1960 till now. You
The
know,
key dates in Nigerian history.
hey,
today.
shout out to Babcock University. There was a girl from there who saw Alvin Okoko and said he was a past president. So these are they are fundamental problems, and these are the kind of problems that have now been built into monsters and shaped young people who do not
Are
necessarily.
you making excuses?
No, it's not
No.
the next.
Okay.
But it's
It's
a
the
reality.
reality. It's the reality.
It's actually a reality.
It is a reality that you've got to.
Also,
deal-
I
you've got to-
mentioned
you've
the
got-
distrust for media.
You've got to deal with that reality.
Yeah.
If you're born with a disability, you've got to deal with it, right? And not make excuses for it. Truth is this: yes, they were born at a time they're dislocated somewhat, but they also form part of the most enlightened generation of Nigerians because they're plugged into what's happening around the world.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to say, oh, you're so enlightened, you know everything going on in America and the rest of the world, you don't know your backyard. Okay, yes, we do. Well, history is not taught, but you've taken the energy to find out what's going on in America, who's going to win the American election, the young people who are emerging in Europe. Going to the same internet, you'll know what happened in Nigeria and all that. No. The leadership and the older generation has a responsibility to inspire them and get them involved. You've got to prepare them for leadership. Because whether you like it or not, sooner or later, they would evolve into leadership. You would expire and the next group will come in. So if you don't prepare the next generation, the country will suffer for it. The next generation itself should also start preparing itself, how do I say this?
Pick up the baton.
They have to. They have to. I know they were born under different circumstances and all that, but it's really no excuse because I know when they want to do something, they do it. We're just walking through this establishment. You guys form the smartest crop of Nigerians, right? You're exposed, you know what is happening everywhere in the world. But if you know everything happening outside and you don't know what's happening within, then there's something fundamentally wrong somewhere, So, in fact, going around the country, I find that the folks in the rural areas know more about the country than the urbanites because we're living like ostriches, So we need to do something about that. But I agree with you, the leadership has to start preparing the next generation. A gentleman said to me when I was governor, he said, who's your successor? I said, I'm working on it. He said, well, let me tell you something. Success, he said, you've done well as governor, very well. But I'll tell you, success without a successor is a failure. I like the rhyme to it, but later on I found that it is very, very true. No matter how well a leadership will succeed now, if you don't prepare the next generation, you fail because everything you've done will be wiped out.
Let's go back to everything you've done being wiped out. You had, you had that,
Okay, I stepped into that one.
You had a brilliant, idea about TNAP and everything, and you left, and the intriguing thing to me is, the person who came in was from the same party, Imoke, and somebody you even campaigned for when you were governor. If we have that problem of even the same party, someone not able to carry on the good work of the other person, where do we go from there?
I told you earlier on, we don't have parties, we have political platforms. So the person just stands on that platform to win an election. He doesn't share any ideology, doesn't share any beliefs and all that. Yeah. The only belief is in himself. In the case of Cross River, it was rather sad because here we were. The Cross River of today was designed by 3 people, largely. And we took the state by storm. We were in our 30s, very idealistic, Here I was, I had this background as commissioner. I'm a lawyer professionally, but I have this background as commissioner. I'd been in the National Economic Intelligence Committee, so I knew the country very well. Imoke, for instance, who was my successor, to date is the youngest senator Nigeria has ever produced. He was senator at the age of 30. And another friend of ours, Gershon Bassey, who is currently a senator today. So we had that, but it's a plague. It's a plague with Nigeria because we don't build when you're governor or you're in office, you're a shift worker. After 4 or 8 years, the shift moves.
Yeah.
If the next shift has to start from the beginning, you'll never complete the building. So that's what happens. And it's not just Cross River. You see it everywhere. I mean, the Tinapa may be a fresh example, but the most tortuous example is Ajaokuta.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
that's still
the
complex.
steel company.
That's an $8 billion investment. If you're going to build that facility today, it will cost you $20 billion. You know? And we walked away.
Yeah.
And we walked. Ajaokuta was done in 1979, 80, 81. Over 30 years ago, and we just walked away as if it was nothing.
I was still imposted.
And we're importing steel.
Too. Yeah.
I mean, how do you rationalize that? Yeah, I mean, Tinapa is painful because it's recent,
Yeah.
but nothing is worse than that. And you have, they say we have 23 trillion naira worth of abandoned projects in Nigeria. So it's just a story.
Yeah.
And no one is held responsible for it. And if you go to talk to someone, in case of Tinapa, for instance, oh, it won't work. It's a white elephant project.
Yeah.
And when I hear that, I smile, because I think the only white elephant is a substance between the brains of the person saying it. Because and a governor said, oh, it will work in Lagos. I say, yes, because you don't want to think hard. But the truth is, Cross River is at the end of Nigeria. Nobody goes there except you have business there. So to get Cross River to work, you've got to create cause for people to go there.
Yeah.
And that's why Tinapa is an important thing. And it's not the structure that makes it important. It's the fact that it was a free zone and that we are a huge consumer economy. And so if I can get the things I want in Dubai and London and all that in Tinapa, 1 hour flight within my country without worrying about visa and all that, it's going to be a huge draw. That's what Dubai is all about. It's the middle of a desert, but you can get stuff there. That's what Las Vegas is. I don't know if you know the story of Las Vegas.
Yeah.
There's a guy called Bugsy. At the time of the prohibition in America,
Yeah.
you know, you couldn't sell alcohol.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gambling was prohibited.
1920s.
Of course, prostitution was prohibited. Everything, you know. So he goes to the governor of Nevada and says, give me 1 mile strip, okay, where I can do anything. I can sell all the alcohol I want, I can gamble, the prostitutes, everything is there. And just give me the legislation to back it. The guy gave me, it wasn't going to cost Nevada anything. So he goes to the mafia. Give me all the money. In 3 years, you'll make your money back. Mafia said, sure. He did it looks good. They gave him the money. But, you know, come with the mafia. 3 years, they didn't make their money back, so they killed him. Yeah. But that is the origin of Las Vegas, right? And if you take Las Vegas out of Nevada, the state will die off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you go to Vegas today, you still have that strip. The airport, everything is on that 1 mile, right? Now it's a huge city now, but it started off from there. So it's a draw, right? London without traffic will die off. So Cross River is not like Benin, where people, I'm going to Onitsha, let me just pass through here and see Osagie and have lunch in Osagie. No, if you have no business, you don't go there.
Shout out to the 052.
You know, it's not like Kaduna where you're going to Kano and all that. You have to have business there. And that's why, you know, the state thrives during Carnival. Everybody's there, right? Now, if Tinapa were working, what you experience in Carnival will be year-long. People, in fact, we estimated about, conservatively, 3 million people visiting. If 3 million people are visiting and on the average they spend 100,000 naira, right? That's 300 billion naira. If you take the multiply effect of at least times 4, that's 1.2 trillion naira. That's about a quarter of our budget already. That's a lot of money moving around the state. So I think, you know, ignorance, but a lot of it is selfishness. Or if he succeeds, Donald Duke will be remembered. That's really the bottom line.
Was it true that you also had it in mind that you will be able to attract a port to Calabar? A port to Calabar?
There is a port in Calabar.
Oh, okay.
In fact, it would have activated that port.
Yeah.
It's a Calabar port.
Yeah,
it would have activated the port.
Okay.
I mean, but what was the design thinking, you know, when you got into, you know, into Cross River, Power and Pulse River? Why was it tourism? Why was that the first thing? What inspired it? Did you read something? How did you
Because
come to that
I know the
conclusion?
state probably better than the palm of my hands. I was in charge of budget. I was in charge of planning. I was in charge of its financing. I didn't just wake up one morning and say, I want to be governor. In fact, I didn't really want to. I didn't think I could be governor at the time, right? But when we talked about it, I seemed to be the best prepared person for it. So I put together a blueprint of what the state should be doing. I looked at the state, 23,000 square kilometers of land, 3 million people. We have our land masses from the mangrove swamp straight through to the sub-savanna, and we have temperate at Obudu. It's an incredible place for agriculture because it's sparsely populated. So you can have 10, 15,000. In fact, I made an offer to the Malaysian government to give them 250,000 hectares of land for oil palm. They came, but I'll tell you that's another story. So very few states can boast of that, okay? Then the other thing was tourism, and folks say, why tourism? For the reasons I said, I needed to draw people to come in. We have great sites. Obudu is amazingly beautiful. We have a very hospitable culture, okay? And it's a beautiful state. It's scenic, the rivers, the mountains and all that. It's beautiful. But above all, because of the innate nature of the people, right, tourism would thrive, as it did. So we took those two planks. Of course, the folks, they didn't understand. Nobody is now that we're talking tourism. In 99, tourism, are you crazy? You know? But we went through the arduous task of not only preparing the sites, but preparing the people, training. A lot of training went in. We sent, trained the trainers in Trinidad and all over the place. We got USAID to partner with us and train people. And very soon they saw the results. People were making money. And that changed the mindset. I tell a story of a guy, because we didn't have enough hotels. So we encouraged people to make rooms available in their homes. So you find that at Christmas, people who had spare rooms, they come to the tourism bureau, we go and inspect, the rooms are good, the place is decent, you know, there's water because we had very good urban water supply, you have a generator that works and all that. Folks are making a lot of money from it.
This was Airbnb before Airbnb.
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, Godwin Osagie said to me once that you guys were way ahead of your time, you know. So people keyed in. I know a lady who, till date, Christmas, she makes almost like a tanker full of zobo, right? And this, on the day of Carnival, she's just selling it. And she says the amount of money she makes on that is that takes her through the year. That pays her fees, her kids' fees and all that. What hotels make in the month of December is probably more than they make throughout the year. So once it started working, and we were the only state that had internal flights. We had flights from Calabar to Bebi Airstrip, the only state in the country. So you could say, I'm going to Ogoja and I'll take a flight and all that. So that created a lot of pride. Then you land in Bebi, which is in the middle of nowhere, and the community comes and welcomes you with their traditional dance, and you take a bus 40 minutes and you're at the bottom of the mountains, and you go on a cable car. It was amazing. Sandra Obiago said to me, she took her kids there, and after 3 days, they said to her, Mommy, we don't want to go back to Nigeria. She said, guess what? You're in Nigeria, you know. But it created a lot of hope. We're better than this. That's the point I'm making. We're better than what we present ourselves to be. We all know that, but somehow we don't seem to be able to get it right. You arrive at our airports, they're smelly, the lights are off, the air conditioning is not working. The lounge we had at Bebi Airstrip was functional. It was small but beautiful with a lot of cultural artistry and all that, and people just loved it. We upgraded the Calabar Airport as a state. It was a federal institution, but we upgraded the Calabar Airport. It was nice, it was clean. Look, I talked about the will. If you don't have that drive, because anyone can regurgitate a vision, but what makes a vision work is the strategy and the will, the determination. I'm going to make it happen. You must see this as your life's work. This is why God created me.
How did the agriculture, how did the palm oil thing go? Because I understood that plantain, banana, I think oil palm too, you know, increase productivity in Cross River.
Yeah. We encouraged, you know, NIFO, the Nigerian Institute of Oil Palm Research. 90% of the seedlings came to Cross River in my time. We literally bought all. We actually got them to set up a seedling multiplication plant in Calabar because we were depriving the rest of the country of oil palm seedlings. And we gave these seedlings free of charge to anyone who wanted, as long as you were going to grow it in the state. So you had people with 5 hectares, 2 hectares, and all that. That was good. Then I befriended Malaysia. I met, he's now back as Prime Minister Mahathir. And then he was in his 70s, he's now in his early 90s. But he just took a liking to me. And he got a company called Sami Darby to come in and do, they wanted to do about 50,000 hectares of oil palm. We were given the land free, right? And the argument I gave was, oil palm is indigenous to our parts. Yeah. It's not indigenous to Malaysia. So if you get the seedlings of oil palm from Malaysia and bring here, you'll be transferring diseases because it's not indigenous to them. So they came in, they liked it, the soil was perfect, they did everything was okay. But the reason why they didn't invest was they said our productivity is too low, which is a very nice way of saying you're very lazy. In other words, how much work goes in a day in Malaysia
Way
versus
and they said they were afraid that if they have to push the locals to work like they work in Malaysia, they will have industrial problems. So they backed out because it's, again, the Prime Minister explained to me that his people are not used to working outside the environment. So they're comfortable going to Malaysia, to Singapore, Indonesia, but Africa was strange to them. And they saw this as a big, big problem, you know, where a foreigner goes in and there's hostility and all that. So they backed out. But they kept on selling the concept that this would be a wonderful place to do this because we were giving out land free. In Indonesia, they were getting a hectare of land for $1 million. So if you want, it was that expensive. But here we're saying, take it free because you can't take the land away and you'll employ people and all that. So, but we're still the largest. We have, there's a couple of companies, a couple of companies that are there now. We're still the largest producers of oil palm in the country.
Oh, really?
Right. We're the largest producers of cassava also in the country. Bananas and plantains. You see trucks and trucks. So agriculture did pretty good. Tourism also did pretty good. But that will to push it to the next level and keep on pushing, keep on pushing. If we sustained it, by now we would have been a self-supporting state.
What would be your strategy to run this across, you know, other states?
Every state must discover its competitive advantage. That's the first thing. Do a SWOT analysis. What is your competitive advantage? If you take Lagos, for instance, Lagos just needs to invest in its infrastructure, right? And have the right policies because the base is already there and ensure that there's more energy coming in. So get more gas. Now they have discovered oil, right? But try and get gas fields so that if you have a lot more energy coming into Lagos, the companies will thrive and employ more people and all that. Lagos is in a very, and now I want to talk about this before I talk about the other thing. Lagos is in a very precarious position. It's actually on a cliff. 3,000 square kilometers of land. It's just a small dot, right? It's the size of one of my local governments in Cross River with 24 million people. Easily about 15% of, maybe 12, 13% of Nigeria's population resides on 1/308th the land mass of now the whole country. And every year, 750,000 people coming in. Nigeria is going to drown Lagos. So what you see here is temporary, it's very temporary prosperity. So Lagos has to do something really quickly. But you see, whatever it does is still going to be short term. Nigeria has to thrive for Lagos to survive. So it's very important that Nigeria gets it right. Otherwise, those 750,000 will keep on coming and it can't work. Alimosho, for instance, is more populous than the whole of Cross River.
Oh God!
You know,
meant to be where Lagos State wins its elections. I mean,
but beyond winning elections, the people are frustrated. They're not doing anything and all that. You know, so
Lagos will cannibalize itself.
But on the rest of the country, there is no part of this country that does not have strengths, right? You just got to do your SWOT analysis. Like I said for Cross River, we did agric and all that. Every state should do that and focus on that. Indeed, if I were president, I'll sit down with the governors and say, guys, let's work on a program 10 years, where in 10 years you will not need any subvention from the federal government, right? That should be the basis of our restructuring, because I believe we need to restructure the country without leaving anyone behind, because the fear of restructuring is that some people are going to have so much and some will have nothing. But you've got to design a system where you can build a country without leaving anyone behind, right? So every state, tell me what's your strength. I give you 3 months. Go work with the best consultants. Come up with your strengths. Let's work out something. I'll give you support to build it. And your strength could be anything. You could be a state that has so much limestone and say, okay, I want to be number one. Whatever it is, but let's build that strength. Look at Singapore. If a country like Singapore can do well and thrive, we all can do well and thrive. So it's no excuse. It's actually mental laziness.
Again, and I keep asking this question.
You're going back to your first question.
No, not the first one. Not the first one. But how again? Because see, it's 36 states.
How am I going to do it?
You have the ideology, right? But it's 36 states, and it's not a case where
you can't do it alone.
You can't do it alone, and if you tell someone or one of the governors, your IGR, internal generated revenue, how do we up it? It's really low, and the guy's like, bro, I don't know.
I just need allocation every month.
I need the allocation every month. It's not like we're all in one room and we just make this decision like this.
That's why I said to you, if I were the leader, right, I'll call the governors. We'll sit down. 90 days, 120 days. Go with your consultants, come up with what would engage the vast majority. What do you need to trigger off your state and make and create jobs, because it's all about jobs. Create jobs and make you guys economically independent. I'll work with them. Not all will succeed. Some will, some will not. But those that succeed will inspire those that do not succeed and all that. You look at America. If Mississippi were a country of its own, it would probably be like Nicaragua, one of those places. But it belongs to this union. Okay? My tourism drive in Nigeria was not based on expatriates coming in. It was based on Nigerians coming in to spend money. So there's a value in being part of this union. Okay? But tell me what you want to do. We talked about bananas and all that. You can grow on that. You can grow on that. For a long time, Cameroon depended on bananas and pineapples and all that. One of the largest pineapple plantations in Africa is actually in Cross River. It's a Dangote farm, not Aliko. His brother, Sani. It's a massive plantation. So it could be that simple. It doesn't have to be anything complex. Costa Rica, all those countries, it was bananas. Once you can key into a market. So if you take a state like Bielsa, for instance, okay, they have oil, but assuming they didn't have oil, and you go to Del Monte or one of these guys and say, listen, we're going to give you all this land, right? We want to grow bananas. We're by the port. Come in. Working alongside with the federal government, giving the necessary financial guarantees and all that. See, it doesn't have to be the big stuff. The critical thing is that your people are engaged in some activity or the other. For a long time, when I wanted to be governor, I remember a gentleman asking me, what is the preoccupation of your people in your state? And I thought about it. I said, civil service. That got me thinking. They influence everything, and it shouldn't be. Because you have human beings, they're not doing anything. Get them engaged.
Let's talk about education. It's at a very dilapidated state right now. Across, all secondary, primary, of course, university. Try to employ people every month. It's frustrating.
The quality that comes out.
It keeps dropping.
It keeps dropping, still having, people are still, the universities are still offering courses that
are not relevant.
Not relevant in society anymore. journalism schools are still not even offering digital,
They are
you
still
know,
yeah.
fixed on
digital
print
packets.
journalism.
You know, it's really backward.
One of the sad things about our nation is our failure to invest in ourselves,
Yeah.
right? And it tells in every sector. Between 79, the next major investment in power was 2001, 2002, right? Whereas you hear in other countries, they're upgrading constantly. I think China, they say, adds about 1,000 megawatts every month or something, some ridiculous number like that, you know? But for almost 20 years, we added nothing to the system. And the same thing is happening in education. Our glory days in education were in the 60s into the 70s. Then there's a population explosion, and we didn't invest.
Yeah.
The schools are not inspiring, and the environment under which you study works. The teachers themselves need to be upgraded. The
Yeah.
teachers don't even know what to teach. The curriculum is, like you said, is
Outdated.
outdated and does not prepare you for the currency of the world. The teaching methods, of course, are outdated. Recently, we had a team of surgeons from the United States, and my wife was conducting a medical mission. So they went to the University of Calabar to observe an operation going on, and they said the methods were using what they were using in the 60s. So an operation that took almost 90 minutes, they said today it will take 15 minutes. And that is telling, because the longer you put someone under anesthesia, the more risky it is, right?
That's what keeps people.
So a lot of
surgeries,
folks
yeah.
passed on all that. So
Yeah.
what would have taken 15 minutes, we do 90 minutes.
Dosing
And, all
them
that.
without mistake.
And you keep on having to dose, and the person may, depending on the person's threshold, the person may pass on. So we have not upgraded. If anything, our nation has deteriorated really fast. They say you've got to invest 25% of your GDP in education to bring up to speed. That's, again, subjective number. What is 25? What is your GDP and all that? But regardless of the amount, right, we first have to do a study of the infrastructure that is required. We need to do a study on the number of teachers that are required. And the manpower is there. We have a lot of folks that come out of universities who have no jobs, right? That youth core year that is wasted, as far as I'm concerned,
Yes.
could be used to retrain them to go into the teaching field. You need to make teaching attractive. And this is not theory. I'll tell you what we did in Cross River. You need to make teaching attractive, and you also make it accountable. Now, how do you make teaching attractive? In Cross River, my example was this. I took them off the tax profile. So teachers weren't paying taxes any longer. That made a lot of people, because it's difficult to tell civil servants convert and become teachers. They don't want to do it. But once I took them off the tax break, every civil servant wanted to be a teacher.
It's attractive, yeah.
Immediately, because you're earning 25% more immediately.
Yeah.
Then I added 10,000 naira as allowances, right, in the urban areas, and 15 in the rural areas. So some were okay to go work in the rural areas. Then I now ask them, every 2 years, I must recertify you. So I got University of Ibadan to come up with a program where every 2 years you take an exam. If you flunk that exam twice, you're out.
You're out.
Okay? Then I said, if you go for an exam, like school cert, and less than 80% pass, say mathematics,
Yeah.
in a school, that maths teacher has to go.
Not in our schools. Though.
So that is where accountability comes in.
Yeah.
To me, there's no bad student. They're bad teachers. Because teaching is personal. You need to interface. So we did a study, how many schools will we require in our state? We found that we needed to build 250 new secondary schools and about 300 new primary schools to ensure that we don't have more than 30 students in a class, 3 arms to a class, 540 students in a school. That is a number where you have a principal who can manage a school.
Yeah, who knows?
Who would see a student and say, you are one of my students in town, and all that. My first shocker as governor was, I go to visit a school like Hopewater, which is one of the most elite schools in the state, and you see 100 kids in the class. The teacher is just there writing. The kids are just doing their own thing. I said, this won't work. So the first thing we did, all the schools that belong to the missionaries, give it back to them. Because it's unheard of. Teaching is everybody's business.
Yeah.
The folks who invested in teaching, on education, you
dragging it from
seize it from them and ask people to invest. It won't work. So we gave it to them. We paid them some compensation. But we set standards. You're not going to have more than 30 students in a class, maximum. And that became the standard in school. So we started building new schools. We needed to have a prototype design for the schools, and we started, replicating the schools to reduce the numbers, and of course renovating even the existing schools that were in horrible conditions. Then you deal with the teaching. Then you look at the curriculum. The sad thing is that as a government state, you don't have control over the curriculum. It's a national curriculum.
Yeah.
So nationally, you've got to look at a curriculum that is functional. You know, the good thing about our world today, you don't have to think hard. Just go to Germany and adopt their own curriculum. That's all. Adopt the German curriculum. Copy and paste, and train the teachers to work with that curriculum, because the German curriculum, even the Chinese are adopting that curriculum. It's very practical.
Yeah.
And you know that the world we're advancing into rapidly is a digital world. So coding, by the time you get to equivalent of SS3, you know how to code.
Yeah.
That's how it works. And so you've got to revisit the entire curriculum, train the teachers to function within this curriculum, and make it worthwhile for people to want to be teachers, right? So if you're a teacher, you can be sure that in the next 5 years after teaching, you own a house, you have a car. Yeah. Everybody will jump into it. And then I can demand that, look, if your students don't do well, you're going to lose all this, right? So how do you own a car and own a house? You have a special mortgage arrangement for them, where the guy can easily own a house or a car. Again, we're going to talk about housing, and I want us to talk about housing and all that. But those are sort of incentives you put in place. The point is, I believe education should be free. I believe that every brain that is untrained is a drain on society. Because if I have an untrained brain, right, and I have no skills, I'm going to be depending on and if I'm depending on you, I'm a parasite. I'm taking from you without giving. So you've got to make China's aspire is a word, for each one of us to be productive. By the time you get to SS3, you have a skill. No matter how modest or menial it may be, it could even be gardening. But if all else fails, you can do something. Yeah. So it's plumbing, masonry, carpentry, this. In a digital world, coding, you can do all that. That makes the fixation of university education reduced. So you've got to do a lot of vocational training, right? Mm-hmm. And people are not going to be too fixated about going to universities. Yeah. Because university education is expensive.
Very, very.
Right? That one, we must have a way of paying for that. It might not be free. But the first 18 years of your life, because after 18 you're an adult, and you can determine what you want to do. Yeah. But until the point where you get to that stage, you must be in school. It is compulsory. You know, once I was in a Walmart store in Houston, and the police were running after this small boy. Really running after him. Police, big guys, about 10 of them running after this. So after a while, when they caught the guy, I walked up to them and said, "What did he do?" He said he should be in school. The boy was running through the aisle. You know, this boy probably was about 8 or 9. Yeah. And you had it, in fact, the police guys were out of breath, you know, they were big guys. Oh my God, he was out of school. So they were going to take him to his parents. Why isn't he in school? That's in a society that's sane. So every child must be in school. It's not easy, it's expensive, but it's an aspiration. We should work towards it.
Why do we have a problem with long-term planning?
Because we are short-term in nature. We're short-term in nature. Even in our personal life, we don't plan long-term. You know?
I want to ask you about the reserve fund in Cross.
Why do you want to depress me?
No. Which went on to save the other governments.
The entire premise of it is this: you're talking about long-term and short-term. Yeah. That's it. Yes, the state had no money, but I said even though we don't have money, we must save. Yeah. So we put a small amount aside every month. 50 million naira was all we put aside every month, and it was growing fast. And we passed a law that no one would touch that money for the first 15 years. And thereafter, if you had to touch it, all former governors will sign on, House of Assembly, everybody who is anybody in the state will sign on. Was to be made impossible for you to do. and it has to be strictly an emergency. It's the first government, federal, state, local, that had come up with that sort of thing. I remember going to Obasanjo and asking him to sign an ISPO in perpetuity. That means before the money comes to us in the state, they're taking 50 million. And he said, what's the meaning of that? He said, anyways, your money, take. You know? So we did that. But we wanted to build a reserve. So states live from hand to mouth, right? And the good thing about that, if it becomes substantial, it's it's like a sovereign fund, because it can become convertible in all sorts of things.
Yeah.
In fact, when Rotimi Amechi had problems with the federal government when he was governor, because he had bought into that's what kept him going.
Okay.
You know, he had that fund, you know, and he had a lot of money, so he used to put aside R1 billion every month. Every month, you know. We tried to sell it to Akwa Ibom. By the time the governor, Akpabio, got around to it, it was late, you know. And if they had it, they now have some issues. If they had it, they wouldn't have had those issues today. But guess what, you know, your successor comes in and says, why are we saving all this money? And even though we thought we had a watertight agreement, politicians are politicians. They just called the House of Assembly, they just signed off everything, changed the law and squandered the money. It doesn't exist anymore.
How much was the state getting as allocation from the federal government at that time?
It varies. When I came in as governor, it was about 500-600. By the time I left, it was slightly over R1 billion.
Moving back to education, if you become president today or in 2019, what will you do about NYSC? Will you scrap it or will you reform it?
You participated in the
participated,
program.
let's just make that clear.
For context, please.
No, the rules were different in my time, right? Because immediately after I graduated, I went to law school. Then I went for my master's. By the time I came back, I was over 30. You know, I came back and literally went into government. And so I got a valid exemption.
Valid
exemption.
Up on, you know,
I got a valid exemption.
Because I don't know if you heard one minister, but
Well, I don't know. There's I don't know. It's, you know, it's not everything you read out there that is true. They said it was fake and all that. I really doubt that. But I know the person involved. I know she lived abroad for a long time. So if she came in after the age of 30, because you see, the thing about Youth Corps, the government really couldn't support it. So there are so many exemptions. If you're over 30, if you went to a polytechnic, you went to this, you know. So it's really not, it doesn't capture everybody from tertiary institutions. And in some parts of the country where the average age in university is late 20s, a lot of people go through and, you know, and all that. Anyway, you need to reform it. You need to make it productive. Going into that service, like I said, you could train them to become teachers if you make it attractive enough. People can give 10 years of their life to teaching before going into other things. Okay, and if it's attractive, a lot of people do that. You could also recruit people from the security agencies from Youth Corps, because part of the problem with our security is that our crime is more sophisticated than the people who are to monitor the crime. So you need sophisticated minds, people who understand cyber crime, who know forensic and this and all that. And you can't get someone who has school set or attempted and say become a policeman. First of all, at that level, the pride is very low. So he can do anything. But when you're a graduate, you know, you want to carry yourself at a certain level. And graduate unemployment is so high. So I think the entry qualification for our security agencies should be, you know, graduate, and that would encourage people
to want to move
in. And once you, not just being a graduate, you've also gone to do aptitude tests, right? For me, before you're promoted in the service, you need to pass an aptitude test, because right now in the service you do 3 years, they move 3 years, you move. No. You need to do an aptitude test because society is sophisticated. So you need to be thinking in a particular manner and all that. I tried to do GMAT and I said, okay, this is serious stuff. But that should be part of it, you know. So you can reform it because it provides you a ready pool of manpower. But those guys go through all that. It's almost wasted. They come out after orientation, they're looking for work and all that. It shouldn't be that way. You should recruit them immediately and get them to. Like I said, if you make teaching an attractive profession, a good number of them want to teach, at least for the first 10 years or something, while they're trying to sort out their lives and all that.
There are a lot of professions that aren't attractive, and that if they are made attractive, people will,
jump on it.
I was talking to my wife, and we were discussing about nannies. It's very, very funny how the only available nannies we have now are from Benin Republic or for Togo, right? If you talk to these nanny
I talked earlier about skills, right?
Yeah.
Even being a nanny is a skill, because there's some psychology, there's some. So you give skills in all its ramifications. I was talking to my daughter about training, butler training.
Yeah.
House helps, housekeeping, and all that. And we need to open a school for that vocation. We recruit people who have no experience, and you find that their bosses are very hard on them, but they have no experience. They're just hustling.
Learning on the
job.
job.
They're learning on the job. So if you open a school where you spend 3 months training the person to be a housekeeper, how to make a bed, how to tidy, how to receive people and all that. Because it's a job. They add, they add value to it. It would help. We should do stuff like that. People just jump into jobs to survive. People, I'll tell you a story. I have this driver, and I know he didn't read the highway code.
No.
So he's driving me. So I'm sitting at the back watching him drive. And I know that I said, after a while, I called his name. I said, "You bought your license?" He said, "No, sir. I paid for it." You must give something to skills. Driving is a skill, right? So everything, there must be training that goes into all that. No matter how, like I said, no matter how menial or modest it may be, there must be training.
Okay.
And that provides scope. If today, talking to your wife, you say, okay, you want to start a school where you're going to train people in housekeeping and all that, and you're able to market it. All these people in affluent areas like this, they'll
come.
They'll send their people, and you go through this course, and they teach you how to do these things. I'm saddened when I go to the home of the very elite in our society, and I see Filipinos.
Yeah, it's a trend.
And I'm sure you see
now.
that.
It's a trend.
It's now like
it's a thing.
It's a thing.
It's a very sad thing. How did they? First of all, how did the Filipino come in here? How did they get their working permits? What's happening here?
Yeah.
And I've seen it happen in the homes of people who are in government. Now, I know a lady who was being screened in the United States as a secretary in one of in the government, and she had an undocumented alien working for her, right? And that's it. She lost it.
Yeah.
She couldn't get it. Here, you bring Filipinos to do that
This is Nigeria.
in a country where they're looking for jobs.
You, by popular opinion, you're one of the excellent governors.
Popular opinion.
Yeah, like
Like I want to be an excellent president.
Exactly. Were you somehow? Did it hurt you that you weren't rewarded with, like the vice presidency or even the presidency?
Yes, I was sad. That's a human emotion. But I moved on. The circumstance was sadder still because Umaru really wanted to work with me. On 3 occasions he came to me, "I hope you know we're working together. You'll be..." And I said, "Sure, but is it your decision to make?"
Exactly.
And he said, "Don't worry, he likes you." I said, "Okay, go ask." So, that's it.
Yeah. I want to talk about power, big problem. We've talked about the gas turbines, how if we actually use the pipelines, the gas turbines, how we can reduce the use of diesel, then increase productivity, and so on and so forth. Fundamental problems have not been able to be fixed. Fashola came in as the minister. Well, he has 2 other ministries to handle.
2 big ministries.
Yeah, big housing, works and labor.
No,
No,
works
works and
houses
houses
and
and
power.
power.
you know, and then power. So I'm of the opinion, I don't think one man should have all
You
those
know, I
ministries
told you
on his
that.
table.
One of the flaws of this, they were not prepared for governance.
Hmm.
It's the Constitution, whether you like it or not, you're going to have at least 36 ministers because the Constitution said there must be a minister from
Federal
every
character.
state.
Yeah.
So if you have a minister for every state, just create 36 ministries, right?
Yeah.
So all this minister of is rubbish. I'll put one man in charge because the buck ends there. So actually I'm you minister of power, okay? And you build up your team on that. If you look at a ministry like transport, you can create 3 or 4 ministries there. You can have a ministry of railway, you can have a ministry of internal waterways, you can have aviation, right? And you can have a ministry for port services. There are 4 ministries there. Why would I create 4? You will not employ more people because there are already people working in those sectors.
Yeah.
You just have to. But what it does is it creates focus. So the guy can focus on his sector. And I'm going to give him a target. So if you're Minister of Power and you want to talk about power,
Yeah.
and you say, okay, guy, you're Minister of Power. And first of all, you don't just take a man and say, okay, come and be minister. Then I sit down and say, you go to health. No. What is your flair? Okay? I know half will say petroleum. Even the man that just studied English will say petroleum. I say, okay, fine. Give me 3 things that you think you can excel in.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can't give a man a responsibility that he's not prepared for. You must give someone what his flair is. So you pick power, and let's have a program for power. I want to hear from you. Go write me a 2-3 page memo on, in the next 36 months, how we could solve this power conundrum that we find ourselves in. So you look at it, you study it. This is your, all right, what would it cost? Like I said, we're an energy-rich country. It's really, really amazing that we could be so rich and so poor, you know? Because the whole country is energy. Gas, petroleum, coal, you know, sunlight. What is your problem? So he gives you a program. This is what it will cost me, okay? And I'll hold you to it. You know, and I did it in Cross River. You sit down, this is what we're going to do. I took charge of finance because usually they'll tell you there's no money. So I make sure I give you the money, right? But if you don't attain the targets, if your target, for instance, is I want to do, you're in charge of road construction and you're supposed to do 4,000 kilometers, 1,000 kilometers every year for, you know, and 6 months into the year, you have not done 200 kilometers. I know you can't do it. So I remove you and put someone else. So if you tie performance, right, to longevity in office, people will sit up. And that's the consequence I'm talking about. So the guy goes there, he fails monumentally, and he's still there.
He's still there.
That's wrong. Because keeping him there, you're shortchanging the rest of the country. Maybe you like him, he's your friend, he's sycophantic enough and hails you all the time. You don't want to lose him. But the country is paying for that. So you must put targets. I told you earlier about my relationship with Malaysia. I went to visit a minister in Malaysia at the instance of the Prime Minister. And he said to me, the Prime Minister's office called that I should meet with you, but I can't meet with you this week. You'll have to come next week. And I have to go back to Nigeria. He said, I'm sorry, I can't see you this week. And I asked why. He said, this week we have a cabinet meeting which I have to give my scorecard. And if I fall below par, I've lost my job.
Oh.
It's that serious. And the Prime Minister wouldn't say that because
he
It's
had a
just-
meeting.
you know?
Yeah.
So I had to spend an extra week sightseeing just to wait for this guy because I needed him. He was in charge of investment, foreign investments, and wanted them to come into investment in certain sectors. So it's that serious. You need to, the failure of consequences is the biggest problem we have in Nigeria. Look at 200 people died in Benue, in Plateau. Nobody is being asked any questions. In that state, you have a police commissioner, you have a DPO, you have police intelligence officers, you have brigade commander, you have brigade intelligence, you have SSS, you have all these people. So how come 200 people were slaughtered and you guys don't know, and what have you done thereafter? For me, immediately they will proceed on administrative leave while I investigate. And if I find that they are culpable one way or the other through omission or commission, I would charge them to go for criminal negligence. People died. And if you do that in one state, believe me, everybody will sit up.
Yeah.
everybody will want to know what is going on in this state because my job is tied onto it. But it happened in Benue, nothing happened. It happened in Plateau, nothing happened. It happens in Taraba. It happens every day. Yesterday, 37 people I'm told were killed in Zamfara.
Yeah.
Nothing happened. Nobody says a word about it. But you have all these people who are paid to protect us.
You know, some would say it's, like we've said before, it's a complex problem. You try to hold one person accountable, but because that person is tied to another person, who's tied to another person, who's tied to
Well,
you.
you have to you have to unshackle them from you. When you're a leader, there must be a healthy gulf, right? You can't be doing party when you're there. You don't do party. You must be almost unemotional about this. Yes, you're my friend. I once fired a friend of mine who was very, very close to me. Very close. I fired him, and the next day I went to have dinner in his house. I said, if you like, poison me, but, you know. And today we're great friends. Yeah. And he admitted that he fell short of it. When Calabar started as the cleanest city in the country and blah, blah, in my time, it wasn't easy. Because getting people to reverse or to change their way of living is difficult. So I told things were really falling apart in sanitation. So I called the commissioner responsible for environment. I said, listen, this is a problem. Tell me what you require. I'll give you everything you want. But in 30 days, if it doesn't change, you're off. 30 days, nothing will change. I fired him. You know, we used to have Okadas and all that in the state. They stopped it, but it's still, I think it's a very poor decision because they couldn't manage it. So we set up a commission to look at that. And the Okadas, I don't know if you were in Cross River, the Okadas, the bikers, all their commercial bikers, their tank, fuel tank was yellow. That makes you know that this is commercial. And each one had a reflective jacket and a number and carried 2 helmets. And if you're private, you must have a helmet and a spare because you could give a ride to someone. Now, to enforce it, and this is where the enforcement, we got the police, we bought them pickups, and for each bike they catch flouting the rules, there's 5K. Oh, the police loved it. Oh, everybody wanted to be on that beat. But this is now legit money coming in. Yeah. After a while, the stadium was a sea of motorcycles seized, but within 6 months, everybody complied, and it was beautiful. Because you need the service of Okadas. They go into areas that cars can't go in. We have not developed the state or the city or our environment to a point where you can discard them. There's a need for them, but they need to be regulated, and there must be consequences for falling apart. And after a while, you know, everybody conformed. The women had a problem wearing the helmets and all that because of the wig, but later on they learned. They go around with a scarf. They put the scarf, then they put the thing on top of their heads. You know,
because it's for your safety.
You must. And if you don't, and you know, we even got the army involved in catching people, you know, flouting the rules. And it will cost you 25,000 naira to retrieve your bike because you've got to pay 15,000 to get the helmet, and all that. Then you've got to pay another 10,000 as penalties. 5, of course, will go to the police, right? So within no time, everybody complied. And if you're robbed on a bike, you easily know, because you know if the guy had a red reflector jacket with number 9 on it. So once you do that, we know who was riding that bike and the registration and all that. So these things can be done, but the will is not there. Unfortunately, the will is not there.
Let's go back to power. If you had a conversation with Fashola, what would it be like? What would be the advice? You know, we've said, okay, set up these systems, but again, we do know it's more complex than that, right? There are some places that don't even receive power. There are some places where transformers have been bought, but they've not been shipped or delivered.
I think the unbundling was wrongly done. They just sold it to say, you have Benin Disco taking care of Delta, this, that, you know. I think actually they would have unbundled it first to the states, right? Then the states can concession it to a private company, right? Rather than unbundling it to regions and all that. That's the first thing. But give it to the states. Why? The biggest problem they have, the private companies, is collecting revenues.
Yes.
So if I sold power, if you have the generation company, you have the transmission company, and you have the distribution company, you meter each one. So Ugeli is generating. And
That's where Steve's wife's from.
oh, okay. I'm coming closer home. So you have between the generation and the transmission, there is metering. So in a month, I know so much power came from here to here. Between the transmission and the distribution, there's also a meter. So I know that from there's so much was consumed. Okay. The state is the primary responsible agent. So the state can, through its National House of Assembly, decide that we're going to sell a unit of power for X. Every state can decide how much it wants to charge. Okay? But the money from the transmission company should be a national thing because transmission goes from state to state. And I'll talk about that. Now, if a state doesn't pay, you have access to its federation accounts. You deduct at source. Okay? Today, the companies are stuck. They don't collect monies from the consumers, and they have recourse to nobody. Right? So let me.
And they can't enforce.
There's nothing they can do.
Other than,
So they're owing the
cutting
banks.
off, yeah.
They're owing the banks, and very soon the federal government will be forced to pay off the banks because some banks are overly leveraged on this. So we ought to have had a system where you give it to a state so that there's a state responsibility. Say, let's take Cross River. We did a lot in terms of electrification in Cross River. When I became governor in 1999, only 15% of the state was on the national grid. We took that to about 80%. Okay. Now, if Cross River, if we had unbundled to the state, we'll have that incentive to put power to do the 20%. Now they don't have that incentive. I've spoken to governors. We would have been the first state to have 100% electricity. Even Lagos doesn't have 100%. Would have been the first state to have it. But once they unbundled it, there was no incentive because how do I get my money back and all that? That's one. But by the time the power comes into the state and is metered, and you can have several points of metering, we know how much power was consumed in that state that month. And this is the value of it. Okay? So, Cross River, pay up. If Cross River is wobbling, we'll just take it from AFAC. That will cause the state to go look for the money. And there's a profit to the state too, because if the state gets if it gets to the state at X, the state can add Y and make some money from it. So it becomes a revenue source for that. I think that's where they missed the unbundling, exercise. Today, it's very difficult to reverse it. But I talked of a national grid for power. If you were able to do that and there's gas throughout the country, then you can have turbines dotted around the country. Because one of the failures of our system is that we take power from Ugeli, for instance, and we're transmitting it to Kano, and all that. No, power should be localized. Anything that is essential must be localized. So water, for instance, is an essential. You don't pump water from Lagos to Ibadan. Everything has to be local. So any essential thing must be localized. Education should be localized. Hospitals should be localized. Anything that you consider essential should be localized. So if you have,
go ahead.
If you have power, if you have a gas grid throughout the country, then you can have turbines dotted around, and you can have transmission lines that are also localized. They call them embedded or something like that, right? So Lagos would have its own transmission system. We feed the system and all that. That's what we should design and work towards it. Can we stop there? Let me just have some coffee.
Yeah.
Thank you.